Restaurant Unstoppable. Inspire, empower, and transform the industry. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, the founder of Halelife Bakery, Laura McCutcheon. Laura, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Absolutely, every day.
Yes, I cannot wait for your story. I did a little bit of research this morning. I love the way you guys got started. As small and scale into something greater, right?
Yes, yep.
So we're going to pull back the layers on that. But first, let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
All right, so I'm a Napoleon Hill junkie.
Ooh, I love
and
me some
so
Napoleon Hill.
the quote that I always try to focus on is, most people's greatest success comes one step beyond their greatest failure.
Most people's greatest success comes one step beyond their greatest failure. Why does that resonate with you?
Because I've had a lot of failures.
But how much stronger were you every time you came back?
So much stronger. Every thing that you fail from, you choose to either learn from it or get defeated by it. So I try to learn from anything that stands in my way.
I can't wait to pull back the layers on these failures you had. And on the note of Napoleon Hill, because not many people, I think when you hear the name Napoleon Hill, the first thing that comes to mind is Think and Grow Rich for most people,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
But I have to give a pitch to his book. Is it Dancing with the Devil or Flirting with the Devil or something with the...
I think it's Dancing with the Devil.
Dancing with the Devil?
think.
I'm going to have to look that up. But the audio version of that book is ridiculous. I don't know if you had a chance to listen or read that book.
So I typically read books. I don't listen to books, but I haven't had a chance.
Oh, it's Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil. But if you are into audiobooks and you're listening to this and you're a fan of Napoleon Hill, that audiobook, the narrative, whoever plays the devil in that book, it's like theater. It's amazing. But anyway, back to your story. So where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Like, when did you didn't, like you said, you had a lot of failures before starting this bakery. So what were you doing before the bakery?
So my background's actually branding and marketing, but I used to do just the traditional type of branding where you think about graphic design, designing logos, stuff like that. But as technology grew, I ended up getting more into online marketing and working with nonprofits and doing data aggregation and doing more about logic flow, understanding how consumers think and navigate through websites and how they consume information through the web.
This is a huge asset to have, especially right now.
Yes.
And I don't want to get too ahead of us, but let's just bookmark this experience, because I feel like in a world where we're increasingly relying more and more on digital, most restaurateurs don't have these skills, right?
Correct.
So you have such a leg up, and I don't want to pull back the layers on that, but take it from what was the first business you had? Because you said you had a lot of failures, and I know you were doing other things, or I don't want to make assumptions.
Yeah, so I don't think anybody would classify what I had was a failure. It was just, it's not what I'm doing right now with the level of success. So I had a marketing company where I just kind of worked out of my house. I ended up growing and bringing on bigger clients. From doing that, I ended up starting a nonprofit, which was an event-based nonprofit about educating parents about the importance of setting.
That's another huge skill set, events, right? Sorry to interrupt, but all these little nuggets are going to serve you later in life. So when you were doing your branding in your graphic design, and then that evolved into digital marketing, were these your businesses? Or were you working for, these were your businesses?
Yeah, these were my businesses.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start pulling back the layers. You said you started first with just the visual aesthetic, graphic design, branding. People who are listening to this podcast right now who have to develop a brand, like, what were some of the big lessons you learned in that element with developing a brand? I mean,
it's really, so when I would try to create a brand, it's such a simple, basic concept. It's connecting your product with the consumer. So it's understanding your product and how that product connects with the end person, whether it's a business, whether it's somebody, a customer coming into a restaurant, whether it's somebody buying a product at a store. It's understanding how the company that you're creating connects with that consumer and clearly, concisely communicating that.
So when we're developing a logo or a design, like, what's the first step?
For me, it's thinking about the colors, thinking about the emotion. So also I was a big believer in emotional branding. So how that product emotionally connects with that consumer. Coca-Cola was a really big founder in creating those campaigns back in, the late 70s, and people smiling and drinking stuff and doing things that were emotionally based, sharing a Coke together. So when you're creating a brand, even though it's a logo, that logo has to emulate and like reflect everything that's a part of that brand.
Why is emotional branding so important? Or why, like, what is happening with emotional branding that makes it?
Well, now it's evolved even more. So now you're looking at social media, and social media is like based on pictures, not just like words and, things that you hear over the radio. It's about visually seeing the emotion that, ties you into wanting to have that product.
So when we're creating a brand, you said you start with the colors and you try to how do colors evoke emotion?
I mean, there's all this, if you take classes or, there's color theory. So like for me, like my brand is about healthy. And so naturally green and organic colors and everything that has to do with, organic, natural things would tie into that brand, at least to me.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of color theory back then, behind like restaurants being red and yellow and that inducing, you wanting to eat and making you hungry.
You're reminding me that I've been wanting to do a whole episode dedicated to the meaning, like the emotions that colors communicate. So there's a reason, like my colors, Restaurant Unstoppable logo, green and blue. Mm-hmm. And I chose those colors because green, like you said, healthy, wealthy, green for money too. And then blue, also that communicates loyalty, trust. And like those are, that's what I'm trying to say. We're here to gain your trust. We're here to be loyal to you, and we're here to kind of put you on a path of wealth in health, in mental health, emotional health, financial health, right? Correct. So these little things make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about, you need to think about who you're, so you said you got to think about colors, but also I'm assuming target market you got to start there too, right? Like who am I trying to communicate to?
Yeah. I mean, that's the first thing is like you figure out who your key target audience is. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you evolve into, visually branding and design to more digital? How did that evolution happen?
So it's interesting. I got pulled into a project. I can't even remember how I found the project. It was online. I think it was like a posting on Craigslist or something random about a project that was about aggregating all the information and things to do for parents in a local city. So I lived in Columbus, Ohio. So at that time, this was 97, I believe, when I got involved in this project. There was really nowhere where you could go in a city and find out the classes to do with the kids or the sporting programs or anything like that. So I got in at the very ground floor, and my job was to figure out how to let the parents in that city know that this website existed. This was back in 97. This is before MailChimp and everything really existed. Constant Contact, they were there, but they didn't have the tools that are now integrated into those email marketing programs.
Where was email marketing at that time? Because I didn't even really start to learn about email marketing until 2010. For me, 2012, when I started learning about entrepreneurism.
Yeah, I mean, it was archaic. It was, very clunky. You pretty much had to aggregate your lists all on your own. There was not the pop-ups to, collect data, that you get now that are now integrated into MailChimp or into websites. So you had to be very creative in trying to figure out how to get that person to give you, their email address, and then strategically get back in front of them to, think about how they conduct their day-to-day life or what they're doing and how, when they would be looking for this information to get the highest return on investment in your time, your energy, your money.
So it's funny because for me, I think it's weird, like how life is all about relativity. For me, I thought that when I started learning about these things in 2010, 2012, the idea of building a list was the most important. It was a groundbreaking information. But the truth is, that's been common knowledge for a long time. you're only as good as the list of people, the list of contacts you have. And this goes back to when you were studying back in like 1997.
Yeah.
Right. And even then, like the lesson's still the same. Build your list and use that list to get in front of your people. Right.
Well, build a good list.
So what's the difference? What's a good list? What makes a good list?
It's your target audience. You know, like you can have a list of 100,000 people, but if only 1% of those people are the people that are actually wanting your product, who cares if you have 100,000 people on your list?
And what else? How else can we make a list of our target audience even better?
I mean, for me, I actually scrub my list. You know, like
what do you mean by that?
I see who's opened my emails in the last 3 months, and if they don't, I just get rid of them.
So you're making the list even more.
Yeah, because like why would you want 100,000 people when only one? And then you're paying for those people to sit on your list.
That's true.
And they're clearly not the person that you're trying to talk to, or is gonna give you a return on investment or convert, you know, from being someone on your list to being an actual customer.
Yeah. And I'm so happy we're already talking about this, and I'm surprised we're talking about it so soon. But when I went to your website, the first thing that I noticed was that pop-up.
Yep.
Boom, right in your face. You're not just asking for an email. What are you doing?
I'm giving them a free baked good.
So you're giving something of value in return for something of value.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But even beyond that, you do something else. And I was curious if we're going to get into this. You know, we're a little ahead of the curve right now, but I'm okay with it.
Okay.
So I don't know. You don't just ask for a name and an email. You ask them for more
information about whether they're gluten-free, vegan, or have a food allergy.
So why are you doing that?
Because we drill down our list even more.
Exactly. Yeah. You're segmenting your list.
Yep. So when we send emails out, based on, you know, certain new products we have going out, or even our messaging of letting them know, because we're a gluten-free, vegan, allergy-friendly bakery, like a legit one for people that have anaphylactic, like very legit allergies.
And we'll get into why you started the business, but I think that this is a really great lesson in marketing right now. Is that it's you know, have a targeted list on your target market, but like get it as like segment it. So the three questions you ask, or the three options are you gluten free? Are you I think, do you have a specific allergy? And it's
vegan, I believe.
Yeah. So that's your three specific within your target audience. You have three specific types of hyper focused sub markets.
Yes.
Right. And now you have specific messages going to each one of those people. And I'm sure your conversion rates are much higher than industry standard.
It's a crazy conversion rate.
What is it?
Around 32%.
That doesn't sound high at first, but average is like 25.
Yeah. On a good list. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, if you're doing 25, you're still doing good. So 32 is really good.
Yeah.
What about, are you using text message, SMS marketing at this point?
I don't. I haven't really gotten into it. I feel it's more interruptive rather than, you know, something that I just haven't really enjoyed getting it myself. So it's not something that I've really put into place.
Yeah, the verdict's still out for me. I mean, when you look at some of the numbers associated with SMS marketing, like a 90% conversion rate, but at the same time, it might be intrusive for some people, right? So I see where you're going with that. Yeah,
I am not like opposed or I would tell people not to do it. It's just not something that and it's also not in my wheelhouse, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So
I can respect that. So back to our storyline. So you evolved your branding to be more digital, to be more email marketing, but you also started getting into like human behavior too.
Yeah.
So how is that different from what we've discussed so far?
I mean, it's just really, it goes back into like a brand. So it's really just truly thinking about how people conduct themselves when they shop or when they're looking for a particular product. So I might be getting ahead of ourselves, but like in our branding for the bakery, so I'm my customer. I have celiac disease. I have a dairy allergy. I have a ton of other allergies and intolerances.
You're making my heart break right now.
So what I think about when it goes into our branding, which branding is more than a logo or colors or your tagline or any of that. It's also how your employees conduct themselves. It's how people dress. It's how they feel when they walk into your store.
Everything.
Absolutely everything. So my bakery is meant when you walk in, it's meant to feel like an extension of your home. It's homey. It's very like woods and like furniture that would be in a house, but also very professional. Our employees are all trained from the beginning to be empathetic, because with somebody with food allergies, I walk into a place and I'm pretty on edge. I also feel intrusive. I feel like I'm a nuisance because I ask all these questions. Typically, when I go to a different restaurant, I don't feel understood or heard. Definitely not safe. I feel like I'm rolling the dice and taking it. So all of our employees are trained to understand everything that's in our foods. We have an ingredient book, but they're mainly trained to be empathetic and patient.
Yeah.
And to be like, we're here for you.
I'm going to make a note, because I would love to kind of pull back best practices when it comes to not just being like meeting like code to be like, safe for serving food, but also like how to do it well from like a heartfelt place. I think we can pull back some layers.
Yeah. And it's definitely, I can 100% understand how a standard restaurant would struggle to do that, because there's a lot that goes into running a restaurant and training staff and stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely important.
There's a few resources out there about, they're escaping my mind. We'll come back to that later. So when we're talking about the digital marketing, the human behavior, and all these new tricks you're learning, that was with the nonprofit that you're developing the skills, correct?
Part of it, yeah. And part of it came from the online program that I was working on. And then I started to also consult nonprofits, large nonprofits, and fundraising.
What was your specific expertise?
Data aggregation and like creating campaigns to convert people from doing whatever the objective was, getting them to do that through digital marketing.
Wow. What a great skill set to have before opening a restaurant.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah. I never once thought that would be, one of my greatest attributes to being able to successfully open a bakery, which I had never done before. I never worked in a bakery. I worked in the food service industry, but it's definitely a key piece of why things have been as successful.
It's a universal skill for sure.
For sure, yeah.
You were working, you said you were doing a nonprofit where you really were behind events.
Yeah, it was very event driven. So it was pretty much putting on very large events that was aligned with, so it was in Columbus, Ohio, and the nonprofit was called Follow Me, Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids. It was based on educating parents about the importance of setting a positive example in the home to fight childhood obesity.
Okay.
So what I did though was that was the whole program, the whole basis, and so I partnered with the MLS, with the minor league baseball team, with Ohio State University, with the Blue Jackets, with the NHL, had programs that aligned with that initiative, bring out all of their elements to a really big outdoor mall there, and put on really large events that also had all these little elements that supported the whole objective of educating parents and fighting childhood obesity.
There's a big lesson to be learned in aligning your brand with other brands.
Absolutely.
And tying your brands to brands that have influence and that can give you exposure.
Yep.
Get into that and how to do that well. How to approach big brands like the NHL, like all the different brands that you mentioned that can help you you can slingshot yourself, right? Yeah.
So, again, all these things I was very fortunate to be a part of it. So I got invited into a marketing leadership roundtable in Columbus, Ohio. And the whole objective was putting all these people in a room that had aligned objectives. So we just pretty much sat down, and for 5 minutes, we all told everybody in the room what we were working on. And then you would just sit there and pinpoint and identify, oh, that person has this going on. And then we had like a 2-hour cocktail hour, which was nice, let me tell you. But all these people, it was like the director of marketing for the Blue Jackets with NHL, the director of marketing and so I was very fortunate to be in that place. But what it taught me is these different organizations or different people have objectives that you can align yourself with, and you can give and take and create something. If you can give something to them, they have something to give to you.
Yeah. Creating those win-win situations, right?
Yeah. And this program ended up being part of the Let's Move campaign for Michelle Obama, ended up being part of Governor Kasich's state initiative. And little little Laura, I was not even 30 at the time, had this big, massive program that had 8,000 people come out a day. Yeah. And but it all came from aligning and initiatives and, being able to create reciprocal partnerships where I had something to give to them, which was an event and exposure. Yeah. And they also had objectives with the NHL and all the, to go out to so many events, to reach so many people with their message.
Yeah. And I think this all starts with the lesson here is the value of having a mission, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of just being, we're in business to make money. We're in business to make money and also to create awareness around something else. And when you have a mission, when you have a purpose, that gives you an opportunity to align with other people. If you don't have a mission, if you're just in business to sell food and that's it, then it's hard to align yourself with other people because you don't have anything to share.
Well, right? And your mission doesn't have to be a philanthropic one. It could just be provide good food and great customer service that makes people feel great. But you always have to follow that mission,
or even if your mission is to serve our community, right?
Absolutely.
Now you have a commonality with other people in your community who also want to make your community better.
Right.
So it's just the power. And we actually just talked about this the other day when I was interviewing Peter Lazar, who introduced me to you. He got into the power of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and having tapping into that self-actualization where people live to serve a purpose, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you can get into that point, if you can find other people that and align your definite purpose in life with other people, and for a lot of people, their definite purpose is creating a better future for their children, right? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of people are passionate about that.
Yeah.
And if you can hitch your wagon to that, it's not in a slimy way, but you can go much further.
Absolutely, yeah. And for me, it's all about leaving a legacy too, leaving this planet in a little bit better of a place, or people that interact with me, or even my team, feeling like they're better having come across my path in one way or another.
Yeah. Now, in your business today, do you do a lot of events?
No. We do tastings and sampling and smaller elements of it. But what led into the bakery is I actually created an event-based program and where our current production facility is. And it was the first ever gluten-free learning kitchen and support center. So I would hold monthly events that, again, were aligned with products and things, and I would have tasting stations. So people would come into the center, go to these different stations, and learn about these products, but try it in recipes and take home a recipe card so that they could make it at home.
Yeah. So what did you learn about event management during this time that served you to this time in your life?
There's a lot of skills to event management that are very helpful in a restaurant. It's being able to pivot and not get stressed out, because you pretty much have to anticipate something's going to go wrong, regardless of how much effort you put into making everything right. Something's going to go wrong, and you have to be quick on your feet to pivot and figure it out. The other thing is detail. You have to be so detail oriented and so organized and just know exactly what's going on. You also have to plan so far ahead, but you also realize all the work is leading up to that day. And if you do that right, your day is pretty darn easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm loving the conversation. So did anything happen between your time with this nonprofit and opening your cafe? Because we're still in Columbus, Ohio at this point. We're in Tampa Bay now. So at what point did you come down to Tampa?
So, it's kind of interesting how I even got into the gluten-free, vegan, and allergy-friendly. So the reason why I started the nonprofit about childhood obesity was I was really, really sick at the time.
Okay.
I didn't know what was going on. I went from doctor to doctor, and I ended up being told by the last doctor that I saw that I was hypoglycemic, that I possibly had lymphoma, and that I was put on this really crazy diet. And I ended up then being diagnosed with celiac disease, and I was extremely sick. My son was really, really sick at the time, ended up getting diagnosed with celiac disease, along with a lot of other very serious rare health issues. And we ended up finding a specialist down here in Tampa that specialized in the blood disorder that he had. So we moved down here, but that was after I was diagnosed with celiac. He was diagnosed with celiac. This was also 13 years ago.
Okay.
Well before gluten was understood or available, or or even the medical industry understood celiac disease or autoimmune diseases.
I mean, because you're so close to this, and I don't want to get too much into a rabbit hole, but I've been having some issues eating certain foods, specifically like gluten, and I thought maybe I might be gluten intolerant, so I got tested. Turns out I'm not, so I don't know what was going on. Maybe it was I'm having such a brain fart right now. I thought maybe I might have had an ulcer, and I didn't know what was going on. So I recently have more of an interest in this. What was happening in our world that all of a sudden everybody just can't eat bread? What's going on with that? Why is that a thing?
So what has been pinpointed from the research and from everything that I've read and who I've interacted with is a lot of it turned when we started to introduce the microwave and processed foods.
Microwave? That's the first time I heard that being...
Well, that's when like processed foods became very like more... People went from having meat and potatoes and sitting down and having a wholesome dinner to like having a processed dinner. And then that ended up being introduced more and more and more processed foods. So mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, all of our food started to go from like eating natural whole foods or eating that more, people having gardens in their backyard, like doing things that were more natural, to like consuming lots and lots of processed.
So it wasn't
wheat.
The fact that we're vibrating water molecules that got people sick. It's the fact that by doing that, it made shitty food so convenient. That is...
Yeah, the level of consumption of gluten and wheat was just dramatically increased, as well as the manufacturing process of wheat. It went from like a really small grain to being like massive grains and being like reformulated.
So they made the grain larger for just yield purposes?
Yeah.
So all the chemicals and what stuff had to happen to that grain to get it that big? What was going on?
I have no idea. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that much information about it. But from I've been really involved in the industry for almost 13 years, and from what I've heard, it's the amount of consumption that we have, and then the way that it was reformulated to be mass produced.
The amounts of processing that went into it, but also the volume of carbs that we're eating went way up.
Yeah, I also think there's also just been misdiagnoses. So I have celiac. I've definitely had it my entire life. I had stomach issues from when I was a baby. I had migraines all growing up. I was in high school. I had very bad, hospitalized. And they ended up telling me that I was making it up and that I had IBS. Sent me on my way, and then ended up at 30 figuring out that I have celiac. Yeah. So does my son. It's a genetic thing, So back then they didn't understand it. So there's a lot more people, there's a lot more education, even in the last 5-7 years, about celiac and about gluten, being associated with inflammation and all that type of stuff.
When you think about it, bread wasn't something we even ate until 10,000 years ago.
Right.
Right? That's not a natural food for us. That's the beginning of where our whole lifestyle changed. It was our ability to farm wheat and grains. Then we started to realize that we can ferment this, and a little can go a long way. And why are we traveling around when we can just stay right here and make bread, right?
Right. And then bread 10,000 years ago wasn't made out of wheat. It was made out of potato or, other grains.
Yeah. And it was also a long, slow process where you have the process of making bread, of having the yeast break down all this stuff. And it's doing most of the work for you. And you're actually eating yeast byproduct.
Right.
So that made you could process it much easier, which is why some people can eat sourdough breads, right? Because that's the old way of doing things.
Right.
So it's very interesting. Most people know this. I don't know why I'm getting into it, but I feel like it's important to we have a responsibility, I feel like, in the restaurant industry going forward to not bastardize food. We've done a lot of bad things to food for convenience. And I don't know, convenience is just one of these things. We're told that everybody wants more convenience. But do they? do we need more convenience? Is
Yeah.
convenience a good thing? At what cost? Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, maybe we won't need to go any further into that. So back to your story. So you come to Tampa because there's a specialist here that can help you. And this is kind of where the story starts for Halelife Bakery, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how did Halelife Bakery, come from this whole event?
So, I mean, it goes back to me opening that event center, the support center and learning kitchen. And I did that for about 2 years. And
that was in Tampa.
That's in Tampa. Yeah.
Okay. You were just getting into why you went from Columbus, Ohio to Tampa Bay. There was a specialist here, and then you created a center. Take it from there.
Okay. Yeah. So, when I was here and after moving to Tampa, I opened a gluten-free support center and learning kitchen, which is actually where our production facility is right now.
Okay.
I did that for about 2 years, and it was really to like help connect and engage what I felt like the underserved gluten-free community here, to again identifying when you're first diagnosed with having a gluten issue, whether it's celiac or whatever, you feel isolated and alone, you don't feel supported. So I was just trying to create a community, yeah. But also help educate, because also you're confused. You don't really know what products are good. You waste a lot of money trying to find the good stuff. You don't know how to like make your old recipes, safe for you. So the center was really just to try to connect people, but also educate them.
Yeah.
As that center went on, everybody, we would have like tasting tables, and people would be like, "This is amazing. Can I buy it from you?" And I'm like, well, that's not the purpose. Like, I'm trying to teach you how to do this at home. And then they're like, well, you should open a bakery. And I was like, well, that's an amazing idea, but I'm not a baker, so I don't know how I'm going to do that. But it kept coming up. So actually, the people that worked our tasting stations were volunteers. And I ended up learning that one of our volunteers was a professionally trained pastry chef.
Okay. I'm curious, before we get into the evolution of the bakery, this started as a center, a support center. Was this for profit? What was the plan to develop this into something that you could,
It was for profit. Yeah. So like it was pretty much a philanthropic based business.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's important because traditionally when people get into the restaurant industry, they're very linear. They're like, I'm going to open a restaurant, and the way I'm going to make money is by following this very traditional model where, I have my prime costs and, I pay 30% goes to my cost of goods sold, 30% goes to labor and tax. And then I'm left with 10%. And if I get 10%, I'm doing great. Right. We kind of just accept that.
Right.
But this is a whole different business model.
Yeah. It's crazy, like outside of the box business model. Yeah.
But I think it's important to show people that you can do different things. You don't need to be beholden to this traditional model, and that other business models are far more profitable.
Yeah.
So before we get into the bakery, paint the picture of what just creating community, right? If you focus on community first, how do you monetize that? What was your strategy to before the idea of the bakery came along?
So that kind of goes back to my event-based background. So what I actually ended up doing was reaching out to gluten-free companies, like product companies, and having them sponsor each table. And then I had them also sponsor the center. And then I would create
sponsors.
Yeah, sponsors. Okay. And then I originally started out having people come and offer it for free. But I also learned over time that if people don't have a little skin in the game, they're not going to show up. Like you're going to spend a lot of time, and 100 people are going to register, but only 20 are going to show up because they have nothing holding them accountable to show up.
Got it.
So I would start charging them a very minimal amount, but I would give them something back. So it essentially ended up being free because they get their $5 or $10 amount back in like free product, and stuff like that.
Got it. So you had sponsors. Was there any membership fees associated with this?
No, it was just like the fee to like come to the event, come to that session.
Yeah. So, but you needed that fee initially because if people didn't have skin in the game, then why show up?
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's a really good lesson for any type of member or like any type of event or anything. Like people tend to not take it. People tend to take it more seriously when they put, like you said, skin in the game when they're invested.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, people started asking you, can I buy this from you? And I think that's kind of, life will give you clues, right?
Yeah. So
take it from there.
Yeah. So I'm not a baker. I haven't run a bakery. My background's marketing. But I ended up finding out that one of my volunteers was a professionally trained pastry chef. She also had celiac. She had a ton of food allergies. So I ended up sitting her down and asking her, would you be interested in developing some recipes for me? And so I gave her a bunch of product and paid her to develop recipes while I continued to run my event center and program. And then just for about a year worked on trying to figure out if we could make certain items.
Yeah, that's another big lesson that I think linear thinking, when we think we're opening a place, we think we have to hire a chef to be on salary, right? Where all you really need is their intellectual property.
Yep.
And you need to pay them for that intellectual property. And then you create systems around the intellectual property.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So we're so used to doing things the old status quo way. Why pay somebody on salary where you just need that help to get to the point where you can take it from there. Right.
Yeah. She's still my head pastry chef. Right.
Does she
she's now salary,
okay.
And she's full time.
But when you're getting started, you can't afford to pay somebody,
yeah, I didn't know if it was going to work.
Exactly. So you find a win-win. You start where you can.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure she was thrilled to have an opportunity to make some money developing recipes.
Yeah.
Right?
And she was passionate about it, and it was something that she enjoyed. And so it was a win-win for both of us, for sure.
So she developed these recipes for you. You're still not a cafe.
No.
So what happened after you got these recipes?
Then I actually started to intertwine them into my events. And I actually did like sneak peek tasting events to get feedback from the people that were coming to our, events to see if they liked it, which ones they liked. And then also ask them questions. I'm all about data. Going back from 1990, I used to always say data is king. So the more data you have, the more calculated and, decisions you can make, the more educated decisions you can make. Like, I'm not about guessing at all. I always want to get as much data as I possibly can.
So you're testing recipes, you're collecting data, you're refining the recipes.
Asking them what would you like to see? Here are the things that I've come up with. What are you looking for? We're all about nostalgia.
Yeah.
So, it's providing things that people think they would never be able to have again, or things that people with food restrictions miss. So like we have a Cinnamon Toast Crunch donut, we have oatmeal cream pies. Those are things from my childhood that I can't have anymore that I miss. So like asking our customers, we do it to this day, what are the things that you miss? What is the number one thing that you can't have anymore that you would just like absolutely flip out about if you could have it again?
And this is the reason I keep on going back to Peter is we literally did like a 2.5 hour interview last night. And I don't know if you're familiar with his book. Have you had a chance to check out his book?
I haven't, not yet.
You got to check it out. It's really great because he gets into a lot of these things. And I think in what you're expressing right now is that you're tapping into needs. And a lot of people think that the restaurant industry is about serving food and the food is the experience. And then some people say, no, the experience is about everything. It's about the ambiance and all that stuff. And that's really what we're selling. What Peter argues in the book is that we're actually not selling experiences. We're trying to figure out what people's needs are and be in serving those needs and tapping into the like, again, mentioning Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you can find like where people need things, and this is really interesting, you realize that people, their needs are to tap into emotions that they can't tap into anymore, the nostalgia, because of their limitations. Yeah. Right. So that's a need that people don't even realize they need until you tell them, like, remember that thing that you love? Like, here's a rendition of that will bring back those memories. Yeah. So
it helps. I'm my customer too. Like I think all the time about stuff that I wish I could have that I can't have anymore.
I mean, it's horrible that so many people, because of what we've done to food, are suffering from these, side effects, right, of our broken food system. But at the same time, and open up a whole new market of people that have these new needs of being able to eat like they used to and they can't anymore. Right. And it's kind of sad to look at it that way, like that these people who need help are a new market, but it's
a very underserved market. If you can figure out how to serve them and serve them the right way, safely, and like with good quality product, you're going to kill it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely going to kill it.
Absolutely. Okay. So really at this point, what you have is a minimal viable product. You're testing your market and you're scaling, you're getting feedback and you're pivoting and you're growing.
Yep.
At what point did you say, okay, when did you know you had something that we could open a cafe? When was that part of the plan?
It was about, like I said, we spent about a year developing and testing. So I still had my event center, and I ended up converting part of my event center into a production kitchen.
Okay.
And it was a very archaic, basic production kitchen. Like, it was a actual oven that you would have like in a house, and it was just Jackie, my head pastry chef, and myself busting out cupcakes and stuff out of this little tiny demo kitchen that we actually had built, that we did cooking classes out of.
But at the same time, start where you can.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what you had at that time.
I also knew nothing about running a bakery.
Yeah, and why spend thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment that you don't know if you're going to need long term?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I had a double oven already in that demo kitchen,
Yeah.
which we baked out of and stuff. So
you're baking these things and you're just selling them at the events now? Or are you doing mail order? Or are you like...
I built out a very small retail storefront because the event space is kind of like a flex space. So there's like a little retail space up front, and then the back part is like where we would hold all the events, and then there's like a little warehouse. So I converted the front space, which is kind of like a greeting area when there was an events, and put like a counter in there and put some countertop bakery cases. It was very basic, but
So was it open like standard business hours? Did you have somebody like...
I gotta remember. I mean, this is 4 years ago. It was open.
This is only 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We just had our 4-year birthday, October.
Well, I'm surprised because I know you have... I don't have any dates, but I know you're at 3 locations now. So only 4 years ago, you were just testing recipes. Now you're at 4 locations.
Yeah, I'm a little crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome. Though. I can't wait to talk about how you've been able to scale.
Yeah. So it wasn't open every day of the week. It was open very minimal hours. I believe it was open like 10 to 3, Tuesday through Saturday, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, you're keeping your overhead as low as possible.
Yeah.
And when the thing is, when you have something that's needed, people will change their schedules to accommodate
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
So like I need gluten-free, celiac-free, or whatever allergy-free thing, bread or dessert, snack. I want it. I know there's only one place to get it. I will accommodate that person.
Yeah,
who's
you'll figure
trading.
it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Keep your overhead as low as possible. One thing we haven't mentioned yet, and I'm curious about how this feeds into anything, or if you guys were monetizing this at all. But your son started a blog.
Yeah.
So how does that work into everything?
I didn't want to get too crazy about everything. So I actually stopped doing all my marketing stuff, and my son started a blog. He actually ended up being one of the top gluten-free bloggers because he started when he was 15 and ended up having over 1.2 million visitors a year.
Jeez. Good for him.
Yeah, he started trying to help other kids that were diagnosed with celiac, and he learned kids aren't on the internet researching, gluten-free stuff, but the parents were.
Yeah.
So his audience was parents of kids that were diagnosed, or newly just diagnosed people in general. But he ended up getting all these companies to send him product, wanting him to promote it. So we actually ended up developing a gluten-free online expo and an event-based program. We would partner with the gluten-free expos around the country, travel to them, and then we would have clients and set up their booths and then market for those companies like they were actually there.
Say that one more time. I just want to make sure I fully understand.
So we had a gluten-free online expo where we would have clients, and then we would pretty much set up a landing page and then promote that landing page or that online expo to people online.
Okay.
And then we also created an event-based program where we would partner. There were 2 major companies, there were 2 magazines that had actual physical expos around the country: Austin, Portland, Indianapolis, Richmond. So we would have some of our virtual online expo clients. We had 8 to 10 of them that would actually hire us to go to these expos and set up physical booths for them and then promote their product.
So these clients are people who make products for...
Yeah, like really big gluten-free companies.
And they're contracting you out to represent them at these expos.
Online or at these expos.
Was that lucrative for you? Was that profitable?
Very.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was this kind of what created the launch pad for you to do the brick and mortar stuff?
That's what created my understanding of all the gluten-free products that were out in the world, that actually gave me the knowledge and understanding of how to create the best gluten-free products that I have in my bakery right now.
So you painted the picture of what's going on. You started with a center locally in Tampa for people in Tampa. Was that before the blog started or after the blog started?
That was after the blog started.
Okay.
About 3 years after the blog started.
Got it. So it was kind of like your test market to develop, because you have all these products, you're seeing what's out there, and then you create this center to kind of to create awareness around what your clients are, what they have, right?
Yes.
Locally here in Tampa. And then that evolved into you developing your own products because you have a good foundation of what's out there, what you can do.
Right. Yeah. So like some of my clients would be like King Arthur Flour, Enjoy Life, which makes chocolate chips.
I would love to have King Arthur Flour as a sponsor, because I love that company. I just recently read a book called Equity, all about employee stock ownership programs. And King Arthur, that is an incredible organization.
It's an amazing. I mean, so that's the flour that we actually use.
Awesome.
But and they were part of our online marketing program.
I'm gonna tag King Arthur in these posts. You guys know Laura. I'd love to have you as a sponsor.
Yeah.
Plug over.
Yeah, they're incredible. They're getting ready to. I'm gonna do a interview session with them, with their innovation team, because our bakery uses their products, only their products in our stuff, and we innovate a lot of products that aren't currently available with theirs. So in the middle of December, we're going to be working with them on.
Put a good word in for me. Okay. Okay, let's start talking about when did you really push to say, let's create a brick and mortar bakery?
So I'm also pretty conservative. I'm all about data. I want to be able to figure out. So, I opened my brick and mortar out of my event space because I already built it out. So I was going to say, is this something that the Tampa Bay area needs? Is this something that's going to be received? Do they like this product? Do they want this product? So after opening it just gradually, with Jackie, head pastry chef, I slowly just started to open up more hours, offer more things, refine my process, and then just continue to reinvest over and over and over, more time, more energy, more money.
I love this approach. And I think, again, people, when they say, I'm going to open a restaurant, they think they have to stop everything in their life, open a restaurant, and hit the ground running at, 8-10 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah, no, I still had my event program running, and I was still doing my online marketing, my online expos, all that stuff, which was actually funding the bakery. It was all bootstrapped and self-funded.
Swing into it.
Yeah.
You don't have to go all in all at once, and you're actually setting yourself up for failure when you do that. When you take your approach of slowly turning up the gauge, slowly turning up the volume, you don't get overwhelmed. You can swing it into it in a way. You can also let your cash flow determine what you can handle. Right?
Yeah, we didn't also offer all the products that we offer right now. I was like, I'm only going to do cupcakes. I'm only going to do donuts, and I'm only going to do brownies.
What's the significance of only doing a few things?
Well, for me, it made my ordering process way easier. I had less ingredients. I also had less things that I had to bake. I could streamline my whole production process way easier. Mm-hmm. It also reduced the amount of storage that I had to worry about. It lessened the amount of SKUs, and then when you're dealing with food allergies, the way that we do things is I vet every ingredient down to the manufacturer. And when I find that ingredient, I only use that ingredient. I don't have 200 different things. I have a very small list of things that I use, and then we figure out how to incorporate those items into new products.
I love it. I don't have anything to add to that. I think you guys can pick up this. It's streamlined. It's less is more.
Yeah. Right? And I mean, I do it that way because of the clientele that I serve, but I think it's applicable to any restaurant. Is figure out, the key items that you're using, and then figure out how to rework and reuse those products and items to keep your ingredient list as concise and, small as possible. Because having to manage so many, different ingredients and SKUs, it's a headache, you know, like, and if
And it's just you and one other person at this time, right?
oh yeah. Yeah.
And I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And then just also refining the process. So like when we started out, we were making a blueberry lemon donut, we were making a chocolate chip cookie donut or whatever. And then I was like, well, why are we making all these bases? We're just going to make a vanilla base and a chocolate base and then top them differently and make those donuts, you know, like streamline the process. And it reduced the amount of ingredients that I had to use, but it also then started taking out steps and how to get to the end goal, which the customer didn't know any difference, whether there was blueberries in the donut or not. If I was able to get a blueberry lemon donut by putting blueberries on top of it, that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah. So because at this point, Halelife Bakery doesn't exist.
It does exist.
Okay. So you did have the brand. You're not just the center anymore.
Correct.
Okay. What was the name of the center?
Gluten Away, which was the name of my son's blog and the name of the online expo that we did.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, so you start what is the significance of Halelife Bakery? How did you come up with that?
So, going back to my branding, when I had clients, I used to create new words out of 2 words, and I would go and I actually recommend it. There's a tool online called Visual Thesaurus. So I would use this tool when you kind of put in, start with, healthy. And then it would pull out it would create this web and pull out all these other words that you can click on. And then you click on that word. So let's say healthy goes into organic. Click on organic, then it pulls out all these other words. And you can just drill down and figure out a word or a meaning to something that most people maybe don't know that actually aligns, and then create a new word. So I came across Hale, which is an Old English word that means to live life vigorously without disease or infirmary. And so our mission is to help people hail however they do. Hail's not a verb, but we now make it a verb. So that's our mission, is to support to help people live without disease or infirmity.
Can you say the name of this resource
it's called Visual Thesaurus.
Visual Thesaurus.
Yep.
And what's the significance of creating a word that you own as a brand? Why is that so powerful?
I mean, it's not easy to do, but if you put enough time and energy behind it, it's kind of like, Google, Google's a word too, but being able to create something, I'm trying to think of another word, like Nike, that's one, So, creating a brand behind something that just rolls off people's tongue, and it's like completely yours. When someone says Halelife, they 100% know that someone's talking about my bakery.
Yeah, you don't have to share that word with anybody else. Why is that significant today, specifically? I mean,
it goes back into the whole branding thing. Like, it's the energy, the emotion that people feel when the things that are associated with that word. Emotion goes into everything. So when you're creating a brand, and creating your own word and creating depth behind that word, like people ask all the time, how do you say it? What does that mean? And then you say what it means, and then it immediately connects with our customer.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm here because I can't eat this, this, and this.
Yeah. I love all that. The thing I was curious about is the significance with like search engine optimization. When you invent something, and it's a word that you own, right? How much easier is it for you to get discovered?
Oh, I mean, way easier. I mean, you still have to put all the work behind it and create all the campaigns and stuff. But the thing that you have to keep in mind, though, is can people spell it right? You know? So, but it definitely helps, when people type in just even like Hale Bakery or, like Life Bakery or whatever part of the word, it's still coming up, at least in the Tampa area.
Yeah, we just did a workshop recently on copyright and what's trademark. Thank you very much. And one of the pieces of advice was, if you can invent a word, you're probably going to be very safe because nobody else is likely using that word. You don't have to worry about anything. And so if you want to scale a business nationally, for example, if you invent a word, there's a good chance you're not going to have any issues later on with somebody else saying, no, we are the Hale Bakery. Like,
right.
What are the odds?
Well, it's also easier to create campaigns around it, like emotional campaigns, like how do you hail, or like our employees, this is how we hail, or, like we also have shirts that say Hail, yeah, like playing on Hale, you know, like, so.
Nice. I love that. So at what point did you like really go all in, like you said 3 years ago, on this bakery?
Yeah, it was actually 4 years ago. Because we did a year before that, before we opened. I would say about 3 years. Like, I really like heavily started pushing into it. I pulled back all my other programs and all I did was focus on the bakery.
Why?
It took the most amount of energy. It was really hard to continue to do all the other things. It was also something that filled my cup. You know, I was able to connect with customers. I felt like a need was being met. And it was something that I felt like could truly grow and continue to serve people, not only in that one particular location, but throughout the city, hopefully throughout the state. And
yeah. You're bringing up something that's, I think, really important. One of the things I'm trying to do more of lately is challenge the status quo. I think there's a lot of buzz out there. More and more people are talking about moving business to more digital platforms, delivery only. I think, is there more? The thing is, when you go digitally, like, you really have like no limitations. So if you open a restaurant, you're limited to the 50 seats that you have in your restaurant at any given time. You're kind of governed by that.
Right.
But if you go digitally, you're governed by your throughput and the demand, how much you can make, how fast you can make it, and how many people want it. So you have a much higher ceiling, right? Much more earning potential and lower overhead too, because you don't need to worry about the physical space that you need to maintain, which is a huge, like, rent and all these things,
right,
maintenance and all that stuff. So there's much better margins in that model, but at what expense? And what you just pointed out, you went from a digital world where you're, you know, have all these relationships, millions of people visiting you every year, but you gave that up to focus on something that you said filled your cup. And I think we need to be mindful of like what we're sacrificing to get more.
Right.
Right. But is it really more?
Right. I mean, my mission and my goal is to like serve, you know, like, and to serve an underserved community, one that I'm a participant in. So like being able to actually physically see and hear, you know, like, thank you so much for being here, you know, like, or now my son hasn't ever had a donut, you know, and like see tears of joy, you know, like actually be able to make, it's a donut, I get that, but it also is giving somebody some sense of normalcy, or giving a parent, you know, or a person that feels like they're never going to be able to have something again. Food's emotional, you know, like that. It's ironic we're talking so much about marketing and emotion, but I mean, when you're told that you can't eat something, it sounds stupid, but you grieve it, you know, like it's not like you're going on a diet and giving it up. Like you're giving up like social experiences. You're giving up, you know, a sense of normalcy. And when you're able to give that person that back, it's you see literal joy. And I wasn't getting that by my online marketing programs and stuff.
And I think we need to be aware of that, because like, as back to human needs, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to be seen. We need to be valued. We need people. We need that. Millions of years of evolution. We are tribal. We need each other.
Yeah.
It's baked, literally, pun intended, into us. Yeah. Right? So be mindful of that. Like, fill your cup, because at the end of the day, what's the point? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think what you're getting at is, if we go and convert over to delivery, that human interaction is super important. You know, like having somebody sit in your seat at your restaurant and giving them great customer service and giving them the thing that you created, and seeing that emotion on that person's face. Yeah. There's a lot more that goes into it, rather than just dropping off a bag at their house.
You think suicide rates are high now?
Right.
You know, I hate to get mortal or gruesome like that, but it's true. Like, emotional, you know, health is something that needs to be really considered as we move into the future, as we get more digital. You know, we need each other. So, okay, we can get off that subject. So it's a little grim, right?
Yeah.
So take us through the lessons you learned, the failures you had, the challenges you faced in opening your first location, your first brick and mortar.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure everybody in the restaurant industry, or just running a business, people, that's the toughest thing about running a business.
Which aspect of people? What do you mean?
Managing personalities, you know, managing expectations, communication. Everybody has different styles and forms of communication. It's actually talking about mental health. I go to therapy. I'm actually going to therapists to help figure out how to be a better communicator, how to be a better leader. It's important to lead by example. It's a lot of pressure, to be that person for all these people every day, but also making sure that you clearly communicate all the things that people need. Pivoting through growth, managing growth has been an extreme challenge. I've grown a lot, and I've actually tampered it down. I could have done a lot more.
Yeah.
But it's also extremely important to manage quality, quality control with customer service, with our product, all those things. COVID obviously created a lot of issues with supply chain, with staffing, with just the natural things that, people not being able to get to you, getting your product to people, all that stuff.
So let's go back. You started with talking about the challenge of communication, being a better communicator, managing the different personalities, in that you're getting therapy to get better at this. What have you learned about better communication? How have you evolved as a better communicator?
I have a lot of just stuff that I'm working through, but I've learned that my past stuff has caused me issues, dealing with conflict, having those tough conversations. So just learning to also walk the line of, I'm all about building a positive culture and team environment. And I'm very close with all my team members. We connect because most of us all have same health issues and stuff like that. So figuring out how to be their friend, but also being the bad guy at times, and being comfortable being that bad guy, understanding that having those tough conversations garners respect out of the right people. If you don't get that respect, then maybe they're not the right team member for you or the right fit. So it's just a big learning curve of growing personally and taking on additional responsibilities and challenges. And I take being that leader extremely seriously and leading by example. But also, what does that mean? Balancing work and life. I take a lot on, so I feel like I should be there all the time. Well, these people don't expect me to be there all the time, but I put that on myself because I feel like I need to be that leader. Yeah. So it's just managing my own personal expectations as things grow. Also managing other team members and their personalities. And
what have you started doing to manage that? Because I think what you're describing, a lot of people can identify with. So how are you being better about understanding that you don't need to put this pressure on yourself? What's the inner dialogue?
It's just understanding more about myself. I'm probably hardest on myself than other people are on me, and I think the level of expectations that I have on myself, I leave and I'm well, I'm going to continue to work. I don't think they care if I'm continuing. I've been there since 4:30 in the morning, they're all you work too much. Go.
It's the pressure to be the hardest working, to set the expectation, to set the culture, to set the standard.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you slow down,
yep,
people are going to see that as the new standard. That's the fear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you walking yourself? How are you getting better about knowing that that's not true? There might be a little bit of truth to it, for being honest, but knowing that you got to find a balance.
I definitely work a lot still, so but also I also want to set the expectation. You don't have to work 80 hours a week, there needs to be a good work-life balance. I'm also very honest, and I tell them that I'm going to therapy. A lot of my team members feel like they need to be perfect or hold this accountability on themselves. And I'm well, I'm not perfect. I'm the owner. I have stuff that I'm working through, and I'm a work in progress. Yeah. It's okay.
There's a lot of power in vulnerability too.
Yes.
And when you get vulnerable, when you're vulnerable, that builds trust.
Yeah.
And trust, what's the power of trust?
It's loyalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The speed of trust.
Yeah.
Right. When people trust you, it's like lubrication. Things can happen a lot faster. You can hand things off because you trust that person.
Yep.
And when you get vulnerable, when you open up, when you think about a dog, when a dog rolls over on its belly, or rolls over on its back and it exposes its belly, that's a dog being vulnerable. And in that moment, how much do you want to love that dog?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the same thing.
Well, it's a little bit easier to get people to do things that are outside of their box for you. They're going to step up to the plate, and they have a more of appreciation, and going back to loyalty to you. I'm really focused on retention and keeping my team members around. I don't want to go find new people. I want to keep the people happy that I have because it's easier. They're already trained. but I can trust them.
Yeah.
You know, I can trust them with everything.
So what's your strategy for keeping these people around?
Treating them like humans.
Yeah.
Being respectful, you know, asking them about how their day is, you know, like being vulnerable myself, sharing personal things about myself. But again, it's a struggle keeping that line, you know, of being their friend and being their boss as well.
Is it keeping people that's caused you to grow at such a quick rate?
I think it's finding the team members that we have that have been loyal. Yeah. Like I have an incredible team. You know, I'm always going to lose people, and there's always going to be some, you know, weirdness with some people. You know, like there's always not amazing hires, and you work through those things. But I mean, Jackie's been for 5 years. I just started hiring people about year 3, just past year 3. I have 19 people now, I think. But I've also added 2 new locations since. I have one in May and then one in August last year. So a lot of those people are new, but most of those people have been there from the beginning of that location opening.
Well, how much opportunity have you provided people since?
There's always opportunity for growth.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but when you have people and you take them on and they're concerned about their needs and what they need, people need to grow. People need opportunity. So if you can be that opportunity, if you can be that growth, that's a win-win situation.
Yeah,
right?
It's opportunity. I give them more money. I try to as much as I can, because that goes a long way. You know, everybody likes more money. But I also try to give them opportunity for education, like learning, opportunity for more responsibility, you know, opportunity for advancement, you know, going from manager, or just giving them additional responsibility with a raise, you know, because as we're growing, I'm only year 4. I have so much additional needs for new processes, more, you know, more managers and, you know, leadership that I didn't need last year. So I always let people know, like, this is a growing business, this is a growing company. I'm looking for these key attributes, you know, accountability, responsibility, attention to detail, and empathy, you know, and not only, and being a good team member, you know, thinking about your other team members as well as yourself, you know, don't leave your space messy for the next person to clean up. Do you want it that way?
That's
that
culture, right?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
standards.
It's culture.
You also talked about quality control when I asked you what your biggest challenge is. So what have you learned about quality control?
I mean, it starts with the person, you know, with people, you know, emphasizing that this is the way that things need to be, like, in setting a standard. We have a very strict standard because, you know, we cater to a very specific group of people. But it also comes down to, like, for me, like, everything has to look the same every day. Like, if a donut's topped, it has to look exactly the same. The reason why is because our customer, if I feel like if they come in and it looks different, they're probably going to think that what's in it is different as well. So it goes from, like, the care and the thought being put into how that donut or cupcake or whatever is topped. It transcends into what that person thinks on how it was made and what went into it from the very beginning.
So what tactics and strategies do you implement to maintain quality?
I mean, we have very detailed processes. So, like, our recipes are measured by the scoop, you know, it's very detailed. The way that every team member is trained to top things in a very specific way. Like, there's just very detailed, laid out processes for everything.
Yeah. So you need, again, you can't be people dependent. You can't have one person that knows how to do everything. You need to create systems around those recipes.
Everybody's trained on everything too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. But when you create those recipes and those standards, you have the framework to educate.
Correct.
And it makes training easier, right? It's not just, you don't just rely on repetition.
No.
Like, you rely on a framework that you can point to and say, this is the picture of perfection.
Yep.
Right.
We have all that. I mean, we have one-on-one training that you're trained, and then you're given your recipe book. You follow your recipe book. There's also pictures, and then you follow, and that person trains, and then you're given a little bit more leadway where you do something with that person by you, but you're doing it on your own, and then you do it on your own and through different steps, and that person checks back in, and then you do it all on your own.
So back to this idea of challenges, like your biggest challenges. We talked about communication. We talked about quality control. What else has challenged you in scaling that you've faced recently?
Supply chain.
Well, yeah. So is that out of our control right now, would you say?
I think it's out of control. I mean, it's like one new thing every day, or not every day, like every week. Like I just struggled finding spinach.
But is there anything you can do to change that?
Have a lot of money and stockpile it.
Yeah.
Like
well, I guess I'm saying
every single thing that you have.
I don't know. It's like an environmental challenge, right?
Yeah.
Where it's almost like just because of the state of our economy, the state of the world, there's just more demand than there is supply right now. So how do you deal with that?
Accept that that's going to be something that is a part of what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
I don't
want to get political.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's there right now. It's accepting that I can't control certain things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where else to go.
Yeah. I guess I was saying, like, I was trying to alleviate this pressure that's not necessarily on you. Cause I think everyone's having that challenge, but no matter, like, that's just one of those things where it's like, what can I do? Like if it's not there, I can't get it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, our ingredients are extremely specific. So like if I can't get our butter, it's not like I'm going to go find another butter. I'm out of butter and I can't make anything. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a very, very big stress. Yeah. But like it's also like you said, what am I going to do?
I think there is some solace in knowing that you're not alone.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
So it's if you're experiencing that, everyone else is experiencing it too. So know that you're not alone. Yeah. Know that it's a we thing and not a you thing.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, everybody I talk to, it's supply chain and staffing. So.
Yeah. So I can't believe how fast time is going. We're already at like an hour and 15 minutes of recording time. It goes by fast, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm trying to, is there anything we have not discussed yet that you were hoping to discuss as far as things that you do especially well, that if more people knew this information, this skill set that you have, this knowledge that you've gotten, the industry would be better?
I don't know. I mean, it's just been all of it has been a huge learning experience. The biggest thing has just been being very specific on my standards, and not wavering from them. I mean, mine's very specific. So like my standards we're gluten, dairy, egg, soy, peanut, tree nut free. We're free of animal byproducts, artificial sweeteners, list goes on. Especially during COVID, it would have been easy to, like, when I ran out of something, be like, well, I'm not going to be soy free anymore. Like I only have, 3% of my customer base actually wants me to be soy free. That would actually diminish my brand quality and standards. Because if I'm going to get rid of that, then what else am I going to get rid of later? And my customer trust.
Exactly. It's like the frog in water, right?
Exactly.
When you're boiling a frog, like if you just turn the heat up and it goes over time, like
right,
there's a big change, but when it's small incremental change, you don't notice it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then not wavering on quality control. Like I'm very adamant that things should look a certain way, be a certain way. But also when we develop new products, I'm not going to put out a new product unless it is on the level of where we're at. And there's been certain times that it's taken us 1.5 years where when we started, it was good. Like people would probably be like, this is a pretty amazing product, but it's not a Halelife quality. Like it's not like you eat it and it's exactly like the thing that you had before or better.
So what's that process of getting the product to where you need it to be?
It's just, it kind of goes back to those tough conversations. My head pastry chef's very passionate and she's amazing at what she does, but she, it's just like knowing what it should taste like and then also giving it to other people and letting them give you feedback. But she developed, we're working on some savory stuff and working on these, like egg bites, these allergen-friendly, gluten-free, vegan egg bites. Kind of like when you go to Starbucks and they have the egg white bites. She made them and we're doing it with mung beans and putting peppers and stuff in it. And she gave it to me and it straight up tasted like grasshoppers.
So how do you tell somebody that?
I told her, I went to her and I was like, you're not gonna like me. I'm like, your egg bites taste like grasshoppers. And she's like, what do grasshoppers taste like? I'm like, it tastes like your egg bites. I don't know what to tell you. So, I mean, she took it well. She didn't think they tasted like grasshoppers, but
I've had grasshoppers for the record, and they're actually pretty good.
Are they?
Yeah.
I mean, it tasted like what grasshoppers smell like, is all I can say. So, but she went back to the drawing board and tweaked it. She's like, all right. And she's like, well, you definitely have like a more palate that's sensitive to bitterness. And so she went and tweaked it, and now they're amazing. We haven't released them yet, but they are definitely like on a level where, and asking other people, not everybody thought they tasted like grasshoppers.
Yeah. For the record, I have had a grasshopper omelet. It was really delicious.
Was it?
Yeah. So I was in Thailand for a little bit, and there was this market, and I was trying to eat everything I could get my hands on. And I got grasshoppers just to see what it was like, but they give you a bag of grasshoppers.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna eat this whole bag of grasshoppers. So I was like, how am I gonna use these grasshoppers in like my everyday life? And I was making like grasshopper.
Put it in the filling,
salad. Like vegetables, onions, peppers, and grasshoppers in an omelet. It was delicious. It was funny because like there would be like an egg, like a leg sticking out of like the omelet. Anyway, back to our story, your story. So one thing I want to start asking all my guests before we go to the speed round, the mission statement here at Restaurant Unstoppable is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. So how have you transformed?
How has the Halelife Bakery transformed the industry?
How have you personally transformed? Behind every great restaurant, there's a great person, right? So how have you transformed?
Oh boy. I would say that I went from being behind the computer to being in front of people. And also I went from being a respected leader in, like when I did the nonprofit, to being a leader within a very specific community and under my roof. And I personally, even though when I was doing the nonprofit, I was doing stuff like this. I was going into news radio stations. I was on, our news stations. I was doing all these like big events. I was standing on stages. I was talking to teachers. I feel like I'm making a bigger impact now with my small team of 18, 19 people, and our customers that walk in and are able to have a product that they trust. Yeah.
I like to use this analogy when it comes to impact. When you think of like, when you're making when you have a wide reach, right?
Yeah.
You think of a big flat surface. It's a lot of surface area, right? You're covering a lot of surface. But if you take that and you lift that big thing off the ground, like this big thing with a big surface, take it 10 feet off the ground and you drop it, it's going to make a boom, right? But it's not going to go deep because that pressure is being spread out. But when you take say it's a 10-pound weight, right? But you take all that weight and you put it on like a little 1-inch surface and you drop it from 10 feet, right? It's going to go deep.
Yeah.
Because all that weight is going deep into a community, and that's impact. And that's what feeds the soul. And that we need more impact. We need fewer shallow impacts, bumps, and more deep impacts locally. We need to see each other.
Yeah.
And then that's the analogy I see when I think of what impact is.
Yeah, I like that. That's great.
Cool. Again, inspire, empower, transform the industry. What needs to change about our industry? What's wrong with our industry? What's broken about our industry?
Well, this comes from a personal standpoint. I just think that there needs to be more education in like food allergies and restrictions in restaurants. And I completely understand, and I've been dealing with this for 13 years, so I know as a consumer, I'm the person taking the risk when I go out to eat. It would be helpful, though, to have even just a broad level of education, because the community is pretty darn big and it's growing. There's so much data and statistics behind the amount of people that are being diagnosed earlier on with food, allergies, restrictions, but also with gluten.
Yeah.
So like just even basic things like shared fryers, the staff members just having some sort of sheet that because I feel a lot more comfortable even if a staff member brings me a piece of paper that has, this is what is okay for me to eat or whatever. I know a lot of places do that, but if it's just, there's a little bit more education taken to somehow connect the kitchen to the consumer and what is safe and what's not.
So where's the best place right now to go get educated on this?
I mean, that's the problem is like there's the GFCO, they actually have a restaurant education program. And then there's FAIR, which is Food Allergy Research Education. They're a nonprofit, and they're like the leader in education in food allergies and stuff.
So if I were to connect with Fair to create to do a workshop, what's the best thing I could do to bring this knowledge to the masses?
I personally don't know like what programs they have in place for restaurants and stuff. I do know that those are the two best resources though when it comes to gluten and gluten-free, celiac and allergies.
So do you think that the restaurant should be on the hook should they bear this responsibility of keeping people safe?
It depends. If they're claiming that they're going to do that, then yes. If they're not, then I believe it's the consumer's responsibility to try to get as much information as possible.
Where does the government take responsibility? Because let's dial back our conversation. Why are we here in the first place?
Yeah, I mean the government. It's definitely there's really not much in place, especially eating out as a consumer with food allergies that you have to protect you.
I know there's a lot of documentaries out there about how we industrialize the food system. Mm-hmm. That was a government move.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's the effect of industrializing the food system having on us today?
Yeah.
So who's on the hook for this? Right? If you go back. So why isn't the government getting more involved?
Exactly. I mean, it's a very big piece of my frustration. I think a lot of people's frustration is they're also the source behind the problem.
So how do we hold them accountable? Right?
Yeah.
These are the questions we need to be asking.
Absolutely.
Right? We need to dig deep and go, why? Where did this all stem from?
Yeah.
And then who's responsible?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, maybe that's another episode.
Yeah, that's like that should be a series.
Right? The first question I have for you is, what is your it factor? A habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
Loyalty.
What is your biggest weakness? I bet it's loyalty.
Yeah. Right. Honestly.
It happens a lot. So often our biggest strengths are our biggest weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What is one question you ask when you're building your team? So during that interview process, what are you looking for? What are you asking?
Are you an empathetic person?
Why is empathy so important?
Because it's our brand trait. You have to be empathetic and understand everything that we do is behind empathy, like the attention to detail that we put in every product that we make and how we interact with our customer.
Yeah, I think we, generally speaking, could be more empathetic towards people who are suffering from these allergies.
Yeah. You also be empathetic with your team members. You have to think about your team members and respect them and be
think about
thoughtful.
What kind of a wrench that throws in the kitchen system when you get somebody who has a serious allergy, a peanut allergy or whatever. Yeah. Like you gotta, when you're busy and you're hustling and you gotta like stop everything. So, I mean, do you actually have any advice around how you can make that better? Is it dedicating a space in the restaurant that's off to the side that is like just sterile?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you're trying to cater to. For gluten, it's just like trying to create a separate space, it's like even like separate bins. So like salads, like if you have a salad station and you have croutons on your salad station, and someone's like picking up all the stuff and then they go back to pick up the lettuce, you just made your lettuce glutened,
That'd be a cool workshop. Like allergy efficiencies in the kitchen.
Yeah, right? I mean, I understand it's hard. Like a kitchen's a small space, and there's a lot going on.
It definitely throws a wrench in the system.
Yeah,
but it's important.
Yeah.
What is your biggest challenge today?
Managing growth.
How are you dealing with it?
Being patient.
Yeah. What is one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team? This is a way to be, a way to act, a core value.
Empathy.
What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? So this is a way to go above and beyond what's expected from your guest.
Patience.
How do you teach patience?
Explaining. There are a lot of customers that come in that are very scared. They have anaphylactic allergies or they have celiac or whatever. And so they'll walk in and it's everything in our bakery is gluten-free, vegan, and allergy-friendly, all these things. And they'll point to a brownie. Is that gluten-free? Yeah, everything in here is gluten-free. Oh, okay. Well, how about this blueberry lemon donut? Is that gluten-free?
They're afraid.
They're absolutely terrified because they've gone somewhere else and someone's told them that it's gluten-free and they've gotten sick or whatever.
Yeah.
So patience.
Yep.
Yeah.
What is one book that's a must-read to make us a better person or restaurant operator?
Fierce Conversations.
What's the biggest lesson from that book?
Going back to what I talked about, learning how to have tough conversations that are productive, and being the bad guy or walking the line, making sure that your point's heard and that clear expectations are communicated.
First time recommendation on the show, by the way. Thank you for that. What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
See their team members as humans.
What is one service you've hired or outsourced? So this is a group of people that do something better than you could ever do in-house, or a technician that you hire to do something.
My son does my online marketing ads for Google and Facebook and everything.
Is he open for business?
He's very, very good. Yeah.
What's his business?
Mylan Marketing. He actually does it for Sonoma Flatbreads and Donatos and stuff.
Maybe I might be reaching out to him personally sometime real soon. And we'll link to that in the show notes to help him out. What is one technology that you've recently adopted in your businesses that's had a huge impact on communication, efficiency, profitability, anything along those lines?
Going back to data, I implemented a loyalty program to piggyback on the free product coupon that we offer online. So we're able to match up the conversion rates of if people sign up for that free product coupon, they come in and sign up. So we're able to track how many new people we have come in, all that.
Yep. And what is that tool?
It is we have Clover. It's called Tesoro Loyalty.
Got it. And this is the last question. It's a doozy. Get ready for it. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your bakeries would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
Lead by example.
1.
You're only as strong as your team.
2.
Attention to detail and quality control are key factors
Beautiful.
in a successful business.
Laura, I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. So who do you respect and admire in this industry? That's how I found you. Peter called you out. Who do you respect and admire? If I got them on the show tomorrow, you'd be listening in.
Adam Grant.
Who's Adam Grant?
He is a organizational psychologist who works with very large companies to help figure out how to build teams or set up processes or structure. Adam Grant, look out. I'm coming after you. I'd love to get, that sounds like it's right up my alley. And how can we connect with you if we really enjoyed today's conversation? Maybe we want to come join your team. Maybe we're starting our own gluten-free bakery someplace, and we have questions. What's the best way to connect? You can email me, which is laura@halelifebakery.com, or you can slide into our DMs on Instagram. Those are probably the 2 easiest ways. Beautiful. Laura, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, to share your knowledge and your mentorship, your perspective. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable. Thank you. Cheers.